When people think about World War II tanks, they usually imagine heavy armor, massive guns, and unstoppable machines. But Japanese tanks were completely different. Instead of focusing on brute force, Japan built tanks that were lighter, faster, and designed to support infantry rather than dominate other tanks. From the early Type 95 Hago with its thin armor and small crew, to late war designs like the Chi-Nu and Chi-To that finally tried to match Allied firepower, these tanks tell a story of adaptation, limitation, and rapid evolution under pressure. So in this video, we're going to break down every major Japanese tank you'll find in Gates of Hell and see what they were really built for. Type 95 Hago. The Type 95 Hago is probably the most recognizable Japanese tank of World War II. It was developed in the early 1930s and officially introduced in 1935, with production running from 1936 to 1943. Around 2,300 units were built, making it one of Japan's most widely produced tanks. The tank uses a crew of 3, commander, driver, and hull machine gunner. That small crew creates one major problem. The commander has to handle too many tasks at once, including spotting, commanding, and firing the gun. Its main weapon is a Type 94 37mm gun, supported by two 7.7mm machine guns. The 37mm gun is decent against early light vehicles and infantry positions, but struggles badly against medium tanks. Speed is actually quite good at around 45 kilometers per hour, making it mobile and flexible. Armor ranges from roughly 6 to 12 millimeters, using riveted armor construction. That means even heavy machine guns can become dangerous. The biggest advantage of the Hago is mobility and early game flexibility. It can reposition quickly, support infantry, and flank slower vehicles. But the weaknesses are severe: thin armor, weak firepower, and poor survivability. Fun fact, many Allied tank crews considered the Hago dangerously easy to destroy due to its thin armor and cramped design. Tip: never fight head-on. Use speed, terrain, and ambush tactics to survive. Type 97 Chiha medium tank. The Type 97 Chiha became Japan's standard medium tank during the war. It entered service in 1937 and was produced until 1943, with over 2,000 units built. The tank has a crew of 4, improving coordination compared to smaller Japanese tanks. Its main weapon is a low-velocity 57mm gun, paired with two 7.7mm machine guns. The gun works reasonably well against infantry and defensive positions thanks to its explosive rounds, but anti-tank performance is limited. Top speed is around 38 kilometers per hour. Armor ranges from 8 to 25 millimeters, using riveted armor. The advantage of the Chiha is infantry support. It's stable, reliable, and useful against soft targets. However, the weakness is obvious: poor anti-tank capability. Against stronger Allied armor, it struggles badly. Fun fact, the original Chiha's gun was designed more for infantry support than tank combat. Tip: stay behind infantry lines and focus on supporting attacks rather than dueling enemy tanks. Type 1 Chihei medium tank. The Type 1 Chihei was developed as Japan realized older tanks were becoming obsolete. Introduced in 1941 and produced from 1943 onward, around 170 units were built. Crew size increases to 5, greatly improving combat efficiency. Its main weapon is a Type 1 47mm gun, supported by machine guns for infantry defense. Speed is around 44 kilometers per hour. Armor improves significantly, reaching around 50 millimeters in some areas, using welded armor construction rather than riveted armor. The advantage is balance. Compared to earlier Japanese tanks, the Chihei feels much more modern and survivable. However, production numbers were low, and the gun still struggles against heavier Allied armor. Fun fact, the Chihei was one of the first Japanese tanks to use radio communication more effectively across units. Tip: use it as a flexible support tank. Good mobility and decent armor make it reliable if positioned carefully. Type 3 Chi-Nu medium tank. The Type 3 Chi-Nu is arguably Japan's most capable wartime medium tank. Developed in 1943 and produced from 1944 to 1945, only around 140 units were built. Crew size is 5. Its main weapon is a Type 3 75mm gun, supported by machine guns. This gun finally gives Japan a weapon capable of dealing with Sherman-class tanks at reasonable range. Speed is around 39 kilometers per hour. Armor ranges from 20 to 50 millimeters, mm using welded steel armor. The advantage is firepower. Compared to earlier Japanese tanks, the Chi-Nu feels far more dangerous against armor, but weaknesses still exist. Armor protection is still inferior compared to late war Allied tanks. Fun fact, most Chi-Nu tanks were held back in Japan for homeland defense and saw little actual combat. Tip: fight at medium range and use cover whenever possible. Your gun is stronger than your armor. Type 4 Cheeto medium tank. The Type 4 Cheeto represents Japan trying to create a truly modern tank late in the war. Developed in 1944, only a handful of prototypes were completed before the war ended. Crew size is 5. Its main gun is a powerful Type 5 75mm cannon paired with machine guns. This weapon had respectable penetration and could finally compete with stronger Allied armor. Speed is around 45 km per hour. Armor reaches up to 75mm in some areas, with welded construction and improved layout. The biggest advantage is overall capability. This is one of the few Japanese tanks that feels competitive by late war standards, but the downside is rarity and limited production. Fun fact, only 2 Cheeto tanks were completed before Japan surrendered. Tip: use it cautiously but confidently. It's one of Japan's few tanks capable of standing up to heavier opponents. Type 5 Chi-Ri, prototype medium tank. The Type 5 Chi-Ri was Japan's ambitious attempt to create a next-generation medium tank. Developed in 1945, only one incomplete prototype was ever built. Crew size was planned at 5. The tank was designed around a Type 5 75mm gun with additional secondary machine guns. Speed was expected to reach around 42 km per hour. Armor protection was planned to be significantly stronger than earlier Japanese tanks. The biggest advantage would have been firepower and modernization. This tank represented a major leap compared to older Japanese designs, but the obvious weakness was timing. It arrived far too late to matter. Fun fact, the Chi-Ri prototype was captured unfinished by American forces after the war. Tip: in-game, treat it as a rare late war support medium, stronger than earlier Japanese tanks, but still vulnerable if isolated. Japanese World War II tanks were built around mobility, infantry support, and flexibility rather than brute force. They may not have the strongest armor, but in the right hands, they can still become surprisingly dangerous.